this is a contest speech. And then I will honestly tell you, a voice somewhere said, and you're going to win the World Championship of Public Speaking. And I went, what? And I just thought, well, I don't know where that came from, but if that's even a possibility, I'm giving it everything. And so
hello, Verity. Welcome. How are you?
I'm so good. How are you?
I'm excellent. Thank you. I'm so excited to have you on the Break Time with Patty show. My dear friend at home, you are a blessed human, and so am I. Let me introduce Verity Price to you. Number one, Verity is an award-winning international speaker. She is the 2021 World Champion of Public Speaking. She is also a distinguished Toastmaster, which is the highest distinction a Toastmasters member can obtain besides becoming World Champion. So she did both. And she's the first World Champion who has ever brought back the trophy to the continent of Africa since 1938. Verity, is that correct?
Yeah.
She is the 2015 Southern African Champion of Speech Evaluations. She has spoken at TEDx not once, but twice. Verity, number two, Verity is a former professional singer turned speaker and facilitator with a phenomenal story to tell. So after becoming one of the world's first online crowdfunders, when she pre-sold 2,000 copies of her debut album back in 2005, she unexpectedly became far more famous for thinking differently than she did for singing. As a consequence of that success, Verity has spent the last 12 years facilitating and speaking on strategy, innovation, and positive mindset for organizations in industries worldwide. She has a degree in psychology and anthropology from the University of Cape Town, and she is a De Bono accredited strategic and lateral thinking facilitator. And she has worked with multinational teams across South Africa and Europe. And finally, number three, she is a woman on a mission. Her passion is helping change the world one idea and one story at a time. All that while being a wife and a mother. Verity, if you did not already have an award, I would have offered you one right now. Let's get started.
Oh, thank you. What a lovely welcome. Wow.
Yes, I wanted to make sure they got the full picture before we even got started. So Verity, can we travel back in time to find out a little bit about more about you as a young girl and a teenager? What was it like to be in her shoes?
Oh, wow. So my story goes all the way back to a country that no longer exists, because I was born in Rhodesia. It's now known as Zimbabwe. I don't know if there's many people that can say they were born in a country that changed its name, but I was born in Rhodesia/Zimbabwe, and it was a very difficult time. There was a civil war. They were fighting for human rights, a very important war that needed to be fought. But at the end of that, things were very difficult. And so my family moved to South Africa, but they lost everything. So we moved with, our car, and we had a caravan or a camper van that we were going to live in. And it was my parents and myself. My brother and sister were 10 and 12 years older than me, so they had already finished school. And so we had quite a tough start in South Africa, but also it brought us really close together as a family, and we're still incredibly close, even though both my parents have passed on. That having to survive adversity as a family really linked us and connected us. And I was just a regular little girl, but I was quite badly bullied because I was foreign. I was in a new country. I had a different accent. The school I went to was Afrikaans. And so from quite early on, I had a tough time at school. And I had this conflict in myself because inside of me, I had huge aspirations. I wanted to be an actress. I wanted to go to Hollywood. I had all those big dreams. And at school, I was being bullied. And so if ever I stood out, people wouldn't like me. And so by the time I was a teenager, I just made the decision that life is a lot simpler and easier if you play a small game. And if you stand in the shadows and don't take up any space. But that was hard because there was still a part of me that wanted to be on a stage. But I, by that stage, was suffering from horrendous stage fright. And it was so bad that if I had to read the Bible in assembly at our school, I just wouldn't go to school that day. I was that afraid of being on stage. And eventually I was forced, right at the end of my school career, they caught me the one day and they said, here, you have to read. And all I did was find the shortest line I could find and then close the Bible and run off stage. So there was nothing to suggest by the time I was 18 that I was ever going to be a singer or a speaker. It looked like what I chose to study, psychology and anthropology, would have me sitting in a chair like this, dealing with people one-on-one. But while I was at the University of Cape Town on my 20th birthday, I was inspired to write a song out of nowhere. Lyrics came to me and the songs just kept coming through my 20s. And with them, this dream, get out there, get on a stage, sing, share your message with the world. And I was terrified. So I didn't do anything. And it took my dad dying when I was 24 to be the wake up, that life is short. It's fragile, it's fleeting. You don't know how long you've got. Don't put these things off. And so that was when I slowly started pursuing the music industry. And I say slowly because I only got on stage properly when I was 27. But I built my confidence back up. I found my courage and I got out there and I started sharing what I had to share with the world. I didn't crack it as a musician. I didn't become the famous pop star I was hoping to become. But when I was 30, I had an idea to crowdfund an album. And I say crowdfund, but when I was 30, that was not a word that existed because in South Africa, we didn't even have Facebook. There was no social media. So this was very, very new. And I became one of the world's first online crowdfunders. And that was an incredible journey. And that's a whole other story. But through it, people started asking me to speak. They didn't ask me to sing. I was quite sad about that. They were like, come speak to us. Show us how to think differently. How can we change our perception? How can we do things differently in our businesses and in our industries? And so for the last 10 years or so, 12 years, I've moved away from singing and I discovered that I could speak and that I had a message to share there as well. And so that brings me where I am today, very fortunate to have become the world champion of public speaking. Wow, still taking it on. Yeah. But it's a journey, it's been a journey of adversity and a journey of leaning into the people that are close to me and trusting that if there's that calling, that's something that says, get out there and do it.
Yes.
Life gets really interesting when you listen. So I'm so glad I listened.
Yes. And yes, you can speak, Verity. And that's wonderful. The world needs your voice. Which brings me to my next question. So it seems like your journey so far, everything you just mentioned did not include you visiting a Toastmasters club. So my next question, because it seemed like you started speaking before you even joined Toastmasters. So what was the turning point that made you decide to go visit a Toastmasters club for the first time?
So my sister, so it's still linked to my family. My sister joined Toastmasters in 2010, just after our mother died. And she kept telling me she was going. She was a very nervous speaker. So I went to watch her icebreaker. I went to encourage her. And whenever I'd go, they'd ask me to do table topics and I would win. And of course, my ego was like, oh, I'm quite good at this. So early 2011, I joined. And I had no idea when I joined Toastmasters that it was about to change my life. And not because of, I mean, this seems like the obvious thing. That is amazing, but that is not why Toastmasters changed my life. When I joined, I'd lost my way. My mom had died. My music career hadn't quite worked out. I was in a dysfunctional relationship. I was suffering from depression and anxiety. And I joined for fun, but what it gave me was community. And I ended up belonging to 2 clubs simultaneously. In fact, I joined the one club that met on a Wednesday morning so that I would have to have a reason one day a week to get out of bed. That's how bad things were. And Toastmasters was that reason for me. And serving on the committees was where I found my meaning. So I actually didn't do a lot of speaking as a member. I've got through and I became a distinguished Toastmaster. But if I look at how long, 10 years to become a distinguished Toastmaster, I was doing far more leadership. But it changed my life, and mentoring other members and watching people face their fears and watching people grow has been probably the most fulfilling thing for me. And it's this beautiful anchor point in my life that a lot has grown around. So yeah, it's been 11 years this year.
That's amazing. Yes, that's exactly how I feel about Toastmasters. I'm very passionate about Toastmasters, clearly, like that's all I talk about. People around me are just so fed up, but it's just a wonderful place to grow, literally, to plant the seed and just see what happens. Magic happens. So wonderful. So now you're a Toastmasters member, and at this point of this in your journey, you have and then you get to a point where I'm sure you had a very busy schedule. You had a family to take care of. So what made you to decide to start competing in all of this?
So I competed for the first time in 2012, not knowing really how it worked, thinking it was just a club contest. And my sister, the nervous speaker, beat me. She beat me. So I was very unimpressed. And then she won area. Then she won division. I was actually sitting at the back hoping she would lose. It was not a great moment. I eventually went and confessed, and she forgave me, and I started mentoring her. She then won district, and she went on to come second in the semi-finals in 2012 to Ryan Avery, who became the world champion 2 days later. So it was quite extraordinary. So having watched her journey, I realized how much work really went into a contest. And I entered the humorous contest later that year and went on to come second in our district. So really loved the process. And she was my mentor for that. But then I just didn't enter again because it was too much work and too much time and too much commitment. 2015, I entered because I had a speech that I believed in, and I got as far as division. And then I never entered again. In fact, I left Toastmasters to become a mother. And if lockdown hadn't happened, I would still just be looking after my little boy. But because of lockdown, I rejoined to help resuscitate a club, my club, Toastage. They were down to 4 or 5 members. And I said, no, come, we've got to save this. And through that, we decided to have a club contest. But I also had a speech. And you have to have the right mindset and the right speech to do well in a contest. And November the year before, November 2020, I wrote a speech about my mum, and I went, this is a contest speech. And then I will honestly tell you, a voice somewhere said, and you're going to win the World Championship of Public Speaking. And I went, what? And I just thought, well, I don't know where that came from, but if that's even a possibility, I'm giving it everything. And so I entered last year feeling like I was meant to be the world champion. And like, I promise you, at no point did I want to tell anyone because I didn't want to jinx it. And, but I was like, I don't know why I have this feeling. And so I gave it everything because I knew I'd probably never have the energy again.
Wow. Oh, wow. That's just phenomenal. Actually, it takes me to the next, my next question. And that little voice sometimes, anyhow, that little voice should never be ignored, by the way. I'm just throwing this out there. When something sends you in a direction, there's a reason. Whatever it is you believe in, some is the universe, some call it God, whatever you want to call it. But when you follow that way, you can't go wrong, in my opinion. So
can I build on that? Just because I love that you said it. And as you said it, it made me realize when I wrote my first song on my 20th birthday, there was that sense I'm meant to share my words with the world. I'm meant to be on an international platform. I thought it was singing and I gave it my all, and it didn't turn out the way I'd hoped. But when I received this trophy and I suddenly went, oh, wow. And 26 years later, I've just got to put it in context, 26 years later, I got to speak to the world, my words, my message. And we really do, we overestimate or we underestimate how long something's going to take to do. And we get upset and we get frustrated that we're not getting where we're meant to be. But sometimes your journey is meant to take time. And when it's your time to step on whatever that stage is, you're going to bring the best of you. I couldn't have done this 10 years ago. That was my sister's time. So it really was a lesson in trusting that when it is your time to have your little time on stage, it'll come.
And to persevere through all the adversities that will come up in that journey. Because sometimes we get discouraged, right? But everything leads to exactly that point you're mentioning right now. So yes, I agree. So yes, so that brings me to my next point. Let's talk about your semi-finalist speech, the challenge, and your winning speech, a great read, for just 1 minute. And you can humor me here, Verity.
Yeah.
So I was homebound during this championship that happened in August 2021. And therefore I had nothing else to do than to watch the entire virtual conference. I'm extremely busy. I would have never had the time for this. So it was either the championship or Netflix, and I chose the championship.
Good choice.
Yes. So I was like right there when they were showing your two speeches. So they were both so beautiful that they brought me to tears. Like I had my little Kleenex box with me, and I was like, oh, not just like the little tears. I was like not demolished. It was a beautiful message. I will not give any spoilers, but my goodness. And the reason why they moved me so deeply is because you always brought up family members. And like whenever you were talking about, family is huge to me, okay? And your stories were so relatable. When you spoke about your mom, you were speaking about my mom. And when you were speaking about your dad, you're speaking about my dad. I'm not even kidding. I was there. I was in your atmosphere. I was in your world for 7 minutes times 2. But I digress. Can you share with us how do you find your stories and what motivates you to share these messages with your audience?
So finding the stories, I think, is always the biggest challenge as a speaker. You know, there's so many things we could draw on. So sometimes you've got to go, if something comes to you, go with it. My semi-final speech is built on something I've been sharing in a keynote I do on kind of trying to reduce single-use plastic on the planet. And it was something I spontaneously remembered while I was speaking to a live audience. I suddenly said, oh, when I was a teenager, I used to walk behind my parents on the beach and I had a bad attitude and they picked up plastic and I didn't want to help. And suddenly this realization of I watched them for all those years, not realizing my mom was shaping who I would become. And it's a short little 2-minute memory that I turned into a speech that got me to the final. So what I've been saying everywhere that I'm touring now around Toastmasters, speaking about the championship, is sometimes a winning speech can be a really small moment in your life. But if you can tell it in a way and relive it in a way that your audience lives it with you, you can have a great impact. So I am passionate about leaving our planet better than we find it. So it was easy for me to choose that first speech. That was easy. Finding the second speech, that's the challenge, because now I've written what I believed was a great speech, but going, what else am I going to say? And so I made a strategic decision that if I make it to the finals, if I've spoken for 6 months about my mother, my final speech is going to be about my dad. And then I was like, okay, but now what do I say? So I wrote 5 different speeches, different stories about my dad, things he taught me about mentorship or having a good attitude. There was all sorts of things. And the speech I ended up with, a great read, was actually a version of the speech I competed with in 2015, which also centered around that letter I found after my dad died. But it was a totally new take on it because so much time had passed and so much in my life has changed. But I think what I'm trying to say here is you sometimes have to pick a line and then explore it. And I mean, I wrote 7 versions of one speech about my dad until I went, no, this isn't going to make it for the finals. Good speech, it's got some value, but this is not. And then I had to discard it and start again. So I kept going till I got that bubble of excitement, like this. And then I worked on that speech for 100 days, an average of 2 to 3 hours a day, writing, rewriting, rehearsing, filming, getting feedback. It was exhausting. I couldn't ever tell you that you could work that much on a speech, but you can.
Wow. This is just fascinating. This is so much work. I know it's a lot of work. I just joined Toastmasters in May, so I haven't done this yet, but I will one day compete. That is a certainty. I know I need to try it at least once, because every time I speak with a speaker like yourself, I always feel like, oh yes, I want to do it too. So I'm very competitive. I was never competitive growing up, but I was more like the the shy type and just really disappearing as much as possible to not be noticed. It's funny, I related with what you were saying. But now that I'm walking in my purpose and I found my voice, like I'm very not in a bad way. I'm competing with myself, but like when I do things, I want to do them well. So I definitely, I'll give it a shot one day.
You must, yes.
Yes. So you said before that you had heard that voice that told you that you were going to be the world championship speaker. But can you tell us honestly, like your first reaction when you first found out that you had made it to the final round after beating 30,000 contestants out of 364,000 members? Did it take you by surprise? Like, were you surprised, like, oh, the voice was right? Or were you like, oh yeah, I was told?
So it was I had a conflicting experience every step of the way. Even at my club contest, there was another speaker who I thought she could win. She had an excellent speech. And then I won. And the same happened at area, division, district. And then we had to wait 2 months to hear if we'd made the quarterfinals. So a part of me knew I'd made it. It knew, but I didn't know who the other 8 districts were in my region. I didn't know how good they were. And then I heard I was through. Then you've got, I think, a month or whatever it was, 6 weeks to work. I watched the semi-final and we were going to hear the next morning at 2 a.m. my time, they were going to announce it. So I actually took a sleeping tablet going, I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning and either I'm through or I'm not. But of course, my brain was like, it woke me up at 10 to 2 and I watched it, but I was so sleepy. I went, oh, okay, I'm through. And I went back to sleep. And it was only the next day that I went, oh, wow. And then I saw I was the only woman, only person from Africa. And I didn't know what I was up against with all those amazing speakers, but I said, I have to step up. I've done the work. And in fact, my coach, Lance Miller, who's the 2005 world champion, he messaged me on the day of the finals and he said, you're the only woman in the field. You have a speech that comes from your heart. You are authentic. Trust your message. Give it your all. And I thought, that's all I can do. But even when I finally heard that I'd won, there was always this part of me that was like, what? And this other part was like, yeah, I told you that was going to happen. Wow. And I've never experienced anything like that in my life. So it was the strangest experience, having this knowing. And Patricia, it wasn't only me. At club level, someone messaged me after the club contest going, do you have your second speech? At area level, someone else messaged me going, what are you going to say in the finals? And after winning district, a club member phoned me and she said, Verity, I don't want to freak you out, but I keep hearing the world champion of public speaking is Verity Price. She says, can I help you like deal with your stress to get you ready? I was like, how do other people also know this is going to happen? So sometimes I think if something's written in the stars, a lot of people pick up on it, but there was still a part of me going, what, me? Really? How did this happen?
Wow, yes. Oh, and I have to say, because you know when you're watching a competition, even like the Olympics, right? You're always cheering for somebody, right? Either your home team or like somebody, a player that you really like, or the underdog. So obviously, you know, because I had watched the whole thing, I have to say I was rooting for 3 different people for 3 different reasons. One, because she was from my district. So for me, she was representing my district. I was so excited that she made it all the way there. And there was one other person actually that, and it's funny, I interviewed them both. Another person, okay, I'll tell you, it was Alexandra Shirokova. I was cheering for her. And it was Daryl Pace with his Shomoto. I was also for him. Wasn't it?
Wow.
Brilliant?
He was
yes,
amazing. I messaged him after the finals. I gave him a lot of feedback as to how amazing I think he is.
And then the third one, well, actually they made it. Yeah. So the third one, then it was you. By the time that we made it to the to the actual finals, I have to say, I was cheering for you at that moment because you were the only woman, first of all, and your message, you were the only one who made me go through like an entire box of Kleenex. You know, the other ones, they got tears out of me. They got a lot of emotions. They were all so impactful and powerful, but it's not even good for the environment actually, but I had no choice. I mean, it kept coming. So I'm sorry for the tree, but anyhow, I digress once again. So when you won the title, it was the first time in history, as we said before, that the winner was from the African continent. Can you describe what it felt like to bring back the trophy to your homeland?
Honestly, that was the best part of all of this for me, because I was carrying 12 countries that are in our district's hope that this would happen. And for me, I kept saying it's for Africa. And in fact, my sister picked me up on the day of the finals, and I could hear her downstairs and she was blasting Waka Waka, it's time for Africa, Shakira. And we played that before the final, before I actually recorded my speech. I danced around the garden going, this is not about me. Because anytime something like this happens for a region or a district or a whole area, it breaks a glass ceiling and it makes everyone else go, well, if she can do it, maybe I can too. So that for me was the best feeling ever, going, hopefully I've just broken a ceiling and our speakers from Africa can be at the finals every year, and hopefully many more of them will bring back this little guy.
Yes. From your lips to God's ears.
I hope so.
Yeah. And so about this then, what advice can you share with Toastmasters contestants to help them on their journey to become world champion of public speaking? Like something you wish someone would have told you when you first decided to start competing?
Well, there's a few things. I think in terms of if you're trying to actually win this contest, ask yourself why. And I got this from Mohammed Kutani. We were on a panel recently, 2014 world champion. He just said, ask yourself why. Is it for the fame? Is it for the fortune? Or is it because you've got a message for the world? And because the bottom line is, if you win this contest, everyone needs something from you. And I didn't know that. I didn't know how busy it was going to make me in Toastmasters, that I would have to give up my weekends and my evenings. But it helps that I was doing it because I had a message that I wanted to give to the world. So really be clear on that, because the ego part doesn't last very long, but the purpose part lasts much longer. But if you are entering and going, how do I make the most of it? The first is you have to have the right mindset. And for me, the right mindset is not about winning. It's going, I'm entering this contest to grow. And if you enter it with the intention to grow, it doesn't matter if you only go as far as your club level. It means you will have worked on that speech far harder than you've worked on any speech. So bring that intention. I'm here to grow. I'm here to get feedback. I'm here to improve. I'm here to stretch myself. And then the second element is your speech. Now, I'm going to say something strange, but trust me, I believe that you could win the World Championship of Public Speaking giving a speech on how you learned to boil an egg.
Yeah.
Just think about that. It doesn't have to be a life-changing moment. It could be something that was as simple as your father or mother teaching you to boil an egg, and the things that went wrong and the lesson you learned and the message it gave you. That could make you a world champion. So we don't need to be looking for profound, deep things always. Sometimes the most powerful messages lie in simple little moments. So trust that and have fun crafting those stories. But most importantly, work on your message statement. I worked on my final speech for 100 days. I went through 4 or 5 different message statements. They were all powerful, but they didn't speak to everyone in the audience. The beginning, it was get happy. The men were like, what? Take your fluffy speech and get out of here. And through working with that feedback and having the mindset, I'm here to grow, I'm here to improve, how can I change? I worked on that message statement, and 10 days before the finals, through feedback I got from a fellow Toastmaster, I suddenly walked away and went, what if I said my messages write a different story? And when I found that message statement, my whole speech changed, it came to life. So really spend time working on your message, but approach the contest with the intention to grow. The winning is a bonus, but the growth you will keep for life.
Yes. Okay, so then I know you're an extremely busy woman, so how do you reconcile being a mom, a wife, a facilitator, and a speaker while maintaining your mental sanity? Do share.
Well, Patricia, I can't say I maintain my mental sanity. I don't know if that would be honest. You know what? I'm very lucky. I've been an entrepreneur for the last 20 years, so I'm used to managing my time. And so I do have a lot of pockets of free time that I can spend with my little boy. I've got someone incredible that helps us. So we're also very lucky in South Africa where we have the infrastructure of people that can help us with our children. So I have a beautiful woman who's part of our family and in our home, and between us, we manage that. And now it's virtual. So actually life is a lot easier. I'm not traveling like I used to travel. I'm able to have some time with him, come into my room, have an amazing conversation, have another 20 minutes, do something else. So I actually feel like it balances for me, and we figure the rest, we figure out. And I'm loving figuring it out, and I'm loving working out how to get the balance right. Even with all my Toastmasters commitments, I've blocked out family weekends going, I'm not available for any work. And that's once a month. There's time for my family, because otherwise I will lose my sanity.
Oh, I love this. Yes. And it's so important. As you're so lucky, you're very privileged to have people that can help you actually. If someone is watching us right now, a woman on maternity leave, or a student, an employee, a business owner, who feels discouraged with the world and doesn't see any light in sight, what would you like to tell them right now, Verity?
I've been there. I know what it's like when it feels hard and you can't see a way forward. The thing that shifted it for me, and has shifted it for me every time, is to start looking for the light. And the way I looked for the light, and actually it was advice from my father, was work on an attitude of gratitude. And when I started looking around my life, noticing the small things that were working, the small things that were going my way, I could start navigating my way through those dark times. So I really believe that if you can just find those little chinks of light in your life, and they're there, the fact that you've got Wi-Fi and can even watch this podcast, that's a good thing. There's countries where people don't have access. If there's electricity, if you have running water, you know, there's so many things that we sometimes take for granted because we feel like other things aren't working. And life is a journey between here, where you are, and there, where you want to be. And a lot of our unhappiness lies in the gap, because we go, but that's where I want to be, and now I'm stuck here. And maybe you've had this experience. The lesson I learned when I was overcoming depression and anxiety was that the only difference between here and there is a T. It's one letter if you spell those words out. And if you take the T from there and you get grateful for everything that's here, suddenly you have the energy to move towards the there that you're creating, but you actually enjoy the journey. That's what's has helped me, and I remind myself to go back to that when times get tough.
That is so beautiful. Yes, I need to meditate on this. I'll do this after, but it's just so beautiful. Thank you so much for this. And okay, let me ask you this. What is next for Verity Price?
At the moment, it feels like a bit of a blank canvas, which is quite a nice feeling. At the beginning of the year, it always has that. There's lots of things on the go, but I'm actually inviting life to make it very clear to me what is next. I've got such a busy calendar for the next 6 or 7 months. I'm going to have to let it bubble up in that. But I feel that as a speaker, as someone who likes to think a little bit differently about life, I just hope that I get more opportunities to be on platforms like this, where I share a little bit of my experience that might just switch on a light for someone and make them realize what's possible for them. So whether that's writing a book or starting my own podcast, I don't know, but I'm just saying, come to me, let the inspiration come, and when it hits, I will treat it like I treated that speech contest. I will give it my all.
Absolutely. Oh, and I'll be on the front seat. Whatever you do, I'll be like cheering for you, like I was doing during the championship. And may I just give you a piece of advice, if I humble where I am? Just don't forget to connect to whatever source gave you that song. You know that when that song just came to you, and when you also heard that voice telling you you'd be world champion, just try to connect to that source and see where that takes you, and you'll see your canvas will become a masterpiece.
I love that. Well, I'm quite cheeky to that source. I say things to it like, surprise me, I'm ready. When you're ready, you just
Oh, I love it so much. So wonderful. Finally, if someone in the audience would like to know more about you, or would like to book you to inspire and motivate their businesses, how can they reach you?
Best place is my website, iamverity.com or verityprice.com. You can see all my offerings, my keynotes, my workshops that I do virtually all around the world. And then obviously I'd love for people to keep in touch on my social media platforms. My Instagram is probably the best, at iamverity. And I share tips and tricks and things that I'm learning about positive psychology, presenting skills, just to keep people motivated and living their best lives and able to pick up their pen and write a different story. So iamverity.com, at iamverity on social media. I'd love to connect with you.
Great. All those details will be displayed on the screen and also on in the description below. To conclude, to wrap it up, Verity Price is on a mission to help change the world one idea and one happy team at a time. And she just wants to help, as she just mentioned, every breathing human being to reach their full, it escapes me right now, their full potential in life. Pardon? What did you say?
Potential.
Yeah, their full potential. Exactly. Thank you for this. And is there anything else before we part that you'd like to share with us, Verity?
I think what I often share in these kind of lovely conversations is just my ethos that all of us, you, me, you watching right now, have a choice. And that is, you can either let life happen to you or it can happen because of you. And that is always the choice. And there are things that are happening to us, whether we like it or not, but how we show up and what we bring to the world is what happens because of us. And when we make that choice, I really believe we leave a positive mark on everyone we meet.
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much for coming on the show. What a pleasure it has been. And my YouTube friend at home, thank you for watching. And I hope you have been set on fire by Verity's presence today. And I will leave you with this. The power of your voice can change the world. Find it and use it. See you in the next video. Bye.